Hey everybody, BJ McKay here, your leadership consultant with ADVISA, and just flirting with a different format right now to interact, to learn together, to try to figure out a way to take in current events, current affairs, things going on in leadership and companies, changes, a variety of things through the lens of predictive index. And I think the goal of these is to maybe travel an inch or two more down the path of self-awareness and self-confidence, but in another sense, to be fuel for leaders who are constantly having to deal with this external stimulus of what to do, how to lead, who do I need to be for people. So what I'm putting out is one in what I hope will be a series of conversations, learning conversations, where we can bring some content out together, whether you're listening to this or you're watching this, that it'll be digestible in either format while you're driving to or from work, but a chance to reflect and to refuel as a leader, as a person of influence, to better interact not only with the people around you and the relationships around you, but with yourself in terms of thinking through and processing how you're taking in this world. So today, the subject is confidence, fear, and decision-making, and we're doing this through the lens of PI. I thought a good place to start would be a couple quotes I got from a book called The Emotional Brain, and this is by Joseph Ledoux. Kind of looks like this. And I pulled two quotes that I think I want to really wed or anchor today's conversation into. And the first one is from a gentleman named Daniel Goleman, I think known as the father of EQ. And it goes like this. Success in life depends on a high EQ as much or more than a high IQ. True derailed emotions can lead to irrational or even pathological consequences, but emotions themselves are not necessarily irrational. Now, why did I pick that? I picked that because sometimes we consider ourselves very irrational animals. When our emotions hit, we can tend to do dumb things or rash things. But I'm going to dive a bit into where these emotions come from. How are they working in us to connect these things together so we're not shaming ourselves or feeling guilty all day long about the feelings that we have that sometimes drive behavior. And I'm going to further it with the second quote and a final quote from the book. This is from what looks like Tubi and Cosmides. And you have to check the sources in Ledoux's book for who these folks are and where it came from, but the quote is spot on. And it goes like this. Emotions involve situations that have occurred over and over throughout our evolutionary history, escaping from danger, finding food and mates, and cause us to appraise present events in terms of our ancestral past. That the structure of the past imposes an interpretive landscape on the present. Repeat that last line. The structure of the past, our ancestral past, imposes an interpretive landscape on the present. So when you combine these, what does that mean? And how does that tie into confidence, fear, and decision-making? What it means is these emotions, these triggers that we feel, and we think, why am I feeling that way? I know I'm safe. Why am I feeling this way? These come from our ancestral past. These come from evolution, decisions made long before we were even a thought. And we're kind of riding on the surface of these waves, trying to make sense of it all. So with those two quotes in our back pocket, let's dive into this topic today. And hopefully as you're taking notes, if you are, and I'm likely going to put out a note-taking supplement to this program, that you can be taking some notes of your own to learn how are those ancestral emotions, those things that kept you safe over the annals of human history, working for you or against you right now. Starting off, as we always tend to do, as our mission at ADVISA is to improve the world one leader at a time. And the way that we do that is a bit how we're working today, through data, insight, and then action. And always remember that last line, that action line, is critical for us. Why so is that you can read books all day long. You can look at as much data as you want. You can even come to insights. I'm going to do this. I want to do that. All right. You're speaking to a person that hasn't taken any action yet. So what we always try to bias things for is action. What do you do with this? Which hopefully you'll see that into what we've put together today. So I'm about to switch the slides over here, and I'm going to speak this out for those of you listening. When you see what comes up on the screen in just a moment, or what I say, I want you to write down, and you can even hit pause on this, for about 60 seconds, all the words that come to mind when I put this word up. So it's going to be a word. It's going to be an equal sign. Okay? And then I want you to write as many words as you can write down that connect with that word. All right, here we go. And that word is change. Change equals. What does change equals? So take, 60 seconds. You can pause this. And if you're driving, you can pause it there as well and just think them through. What words come to mind when I say change to you? Now, if you've unpaused, we're going to work on one of those words. And some of you might have been optimistic. It's going to be opportunity. I can make things. It's an opportunity to advance myself, to develop. Other people might have talked about things like uncertainty, doubt, concern, or the word we're going to operate off of today, fear. It's natural when we experience change to fear. Well, why is that? Well, let's go back to the quote that we started with. We have an ancestral past. In that deep past, were there big time things to fear? Well, what happens when you went into the woods a couple thousand years ago? Scary things lived in the woods that can kill you. So yes, there was legitimate fear about doing things like that. All over, life was rife with things that could take things from you. Now, so in the modern times, less when it comes to our physical health. Less things are actually worthy of the fear that we sometimes give them. So let's break down. When we experience change, which we do often, we sometimes don't like it, and it inspires that fear. And when fear happens, emotions come from that. Another framework we're going to build off of is something called the connection circle, which you see on the screen right now. And I'm going to, again, talk through it for those that are maybe on a car ride or listening. So in the center circle, you see self-awareness. Self-awareness is really the take home from this conversation we're having today. Without self-awareness, it's almost impossible to get to these other aspects of the connection circle. So you have self-awareness in the middle, and self-awareness, the next circle, is self-management. So if I don't have self-awareness, there's really no use to try to manage myself. Whatever I do is the thing I should be doing at all times. Why? I lack self-awareness. And our definition of self-awareness is kind of understanding our makeup, understanding what when our emotions course through us, what's going on. Being able to observe ourselves from a little bit of a disconnected fashion. We are aware of what's going on. It allows us to have a sense of a pause, if you will, that we can make choices in terms of how we self-manage. So think about that when I put that bedrock back into fear. When I fear something, okay, what we want to do with that fear when it triggers our emotions is get to that self-awareness circle in the middle so that we can more effectively self-manage. And the outer two circles, this is if you apply it to leadership, this is the outer work of leadership. If I self-manage, I'm going to better engage others, which makes me a more useful leader. If I can engage other people and ultimately achieve business results or even results in my life. All right. This is the circle, starting at self-awareness, move into self-management to engaging others, and then business results. For today's purpose, we're going to stay in the inner circle, which is self-awareness and self-management as we go forward. Before we do that, let's talk about why people behave the way that they do. So if you've been through predictive index training and you're an analyst, you've been through one of our programs, you know that what we're measuring with the predictive index behavioral assessment is drives. And what are drives? Well, we have a drive to stay alive. And the drives necessitate needs. If I want to stay alive, I need food, water, shelter, air, etc. All right. And we're experiencing life through these invisible forces that happen. Then comes behavior. So after drives act on us and needs start moving us toward behavior, all right, behavior comes. It's important to note that behavior is visible. It's on the other side of needs and drives. I like that line there because it designates a choice we get to make. Because with predictive index, it's largely genetic. We have what we are. Personality is what it is. We can do what we wish with it. So when those needs and drives are acting on us, and we're going to talk deeper about that in just a moment, sometimes when we're not self-aware, behaviors just come. And we're going to talk about some of those behaviors when we're particularly when we're scared. But if we're able to pause, we can select different behaviors. So when you're thinking about predictive index, your own assessment or other people's assessment that you're working with, don't look at this as any form of a limiter. It's a self-awareness tool, and it starts to give you the beginnings of a roadmap to better self-manage and select different behavior. So let's put an X over behavior, because we can do all the behaviors necessary. The question is, what is our roadmap when it comes to our needs and drives? So with that as the bedrock, let's talk about PI, behavioral assessment, under the auspices of confidence and fear. And during the time that this is being recorded, we're experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, and some people's confidence is shaken, and people are scared. There's a lot of change going on, and for the first time, and I guess since I can remember, and I'm 40 years old, there's no way to escape it. It's happening everywhere. So what do we do, not only in a circumstance like this, but what if it's happening in your company? What if it's happening in other relationships where your confidence is shaken and there's legitimate fears going on? How do you manage? And we're going to look at that through PI. And in this example, I'm going to touch on the low drives occasionally, but this is primarily looking at the high drives, A, B, C, and D. Let's dive in. So on the screen, if you're looking, I'm just giving a little quick reminder on how to read your behavioral assessment. So if you're looking at your self-assessment, which would be the top graph, or the only graph if you're looking at a placard, there's a midpoint. There's a little dot. It says 0. If I draw a line straight up and down, anytime one of my drives or the dots on there is on the high side, it's to the right, it's high. Excuse me. If it's on the right, it's high. That's to the right of the midpoint. If it falls to the left of the midpoint, it's considered low. And for today's session, you're just going to want to look at your profile and know, is my drive high, A, B, C, or D? And once you get that, you can start making sense of what we're teaching today and what we're talking about. So remember, drive shows up on the right of the midpoint, high, left of the midpoint, low. So as we're looking at each drive, I want to embed our conversation into, where do I get self-confidence? Where's my confidence come from if my drive is high? So for the A drive, my self-confidence comes internally, inside me. The B drive, self-confidence comes externally, okay, from others, from around me, from other people primarily. The C drive, there's two, which is process, and the familiar or family is where I get self-confidence. And then D drive is a drive for correctness. I get my self-confidence when I know what right is. So when I'm scared, when I'm feeling that I'm going to lose something, or my needs are going to get taken from me, when my self-confidence is shaken, when you look at this list, internal, external, process, and familiar, correctness, each one of these sources of self-confidence, they get shaken when I fear loss, like someone's going to take that from me. And why we end up fearing that, if we don't have self-confidence, it's just simply hard to be productive. And our founder of ADVISA has a great quote. He says, confidence is the currency of productivity. That's Bob Wilson. Confidence is the currency of productivity. And whether you're listening to this in a work paradigm or just in general for your life, we want to be productive. We want to be useful out there. We want to have great relationships. And to do so without self-confidence can tend to be dangerous. So let's pin ourselves and anchor ourselves in to each one of these sources of self-confidence as we navigate what type of fears arrive for these high drives, A, B, C, and D. Let's start with the A drive. All right. So if you remember the A drive, high A individuals or people get their self-confidence internally. So what does that mean? All right. My self-confidence comes inside me. I don't need to be, quote unquote, motivated by other people. All right. So what's that look like? What type of behaviors do you see from me? All right. I want to do things my way. I tend to individually problem solve before I engage other people. I like to fix things to get myself out of trouble with my own two hands. This is how I interact with the world. And it's a technical drive, or a task-oriented drive. So I'm thinking about things, trying to fix things, make things happen, a lot of utility. All right. And I'm looking for individual impact. So if you see that top of the graph there, it says impact. I'm looking for that individual impact. All right. And on the low side, if you're a low A listing, we're going to get to your high drive shortly. What I'm trying to avoid if I'm a low drive is conflict. All right. I'm trying to navigate around conflict. So when fear hits and you have a low drive, I put something in there for you. How is this bringing additional conflict or threats of conflict into my existence? All right. And remember, before I even go further, what happens when we feel fear? Do we make the best decisions? No, we make the most urgent decisions to get ourselves to a safe place, all right, inside of ourselves. So what are the high A sources of fear? And as I go through these, you're going to recognize a pattern. The first one is loss of freedom. I fear loss of freedom. So when something's happening around me, what I'm looking for, and this is happening under the surface of my subconscious sometimes, is I fear that my freedom is going to get taken away. Okay? I'm not going to be allowed to do things. And what type of behavior could come from that? Well, I can push back. I can fight. I can get competitive, blunt, direct, aggressive if I feel like someone's going to take my freedom. And then all the behaviors that come after that are trying to regain it, sometimes not very effectively. The second is loss of control and power. All right. So it kind of goes hand in hand with freedom. I want to decide how I live my life. I want to decide how things should work within my business, within my division, in different relationships. When I lack control and power, if I have a high A drive, I feel like I'm losing utility to solve problems, to remove suffering from other people's lives, to fix things. So losing control and power is untenable, and you'll see a high person really set their feet down and fight if they perceive that that loss is there. A third fear is losses of challenges that are worthy of me. Losing challenges that are worthy of me. High A's thrive on challenges that are sometimes way bigger than themselves. I want to accomplish something that looks impossible, that's really, really hard, that tests me. All right. So if I'm in a situation where I'm not allowed to solve problems, the challenges are easy, just put it on cruise control. Just take it easy. Just take a back seat. High A's can struggle in that environment. That's a legitimate fear. I'm not needed around here. I'm not necessary, or kind of a swear word in the high A community is I'm useless, or I feel useless. I want to be put to work. And finally, it's a loss of resources I can fear. My money or a budget, something that I have, like whatever my treasure is. Someone's going to take that. You can connect that back with control and power. You can connect it back with freedom, but it makes it a little bit more concrete. All right. So if I feel like there's scarcity and I'm a high A, I'll start fighting to regain that sense of abundance that a high A likes to operate from so I can solve problems. So if you choose to hit pause right now and you happen to be a high A, I want you to think about two particular questions as this relates to yourself as a high A. Number one, when a person feels this way, and by this way I mean this fear, how might they choose to behave? It's a critical question. If you're a high A, you can write down, how might you choose to behave if you fear any of these losses? The second question I would pose is, what coaching could we offer this person when this state of fear emerges? And if you're looking at this under the auspices of self-development, what type of questions could you be asking yourself? What type of things could you do to collect yourself, to gain self-awareness before you behave, before you take an action? So if you choose to hit pause right now and jot down some notes, it would be a really good time. All right, let's move on to the B drive. The B drive is a drive for extroversion. You see that on the top of the screen. And what are we looking at? We're looking at self-confidence coming externally. All right, that means from other people. All right, I'm looking to get those things from other people. On the low end of the B drive, what do I want? I want no commotion. So again, looking at fear, when I feel fear, if I'm high B, I'm looking to gain my self-confidence externally. So people's opinions and all of these things about me matter to me. How am I affecting the people around me? Okay. I want to look at how am I driven in that direction? And on the low B side, no commotion. So when I feel fear, what I might do, close the door, go on lockdown, go heads down until I can figure this out and think about it on my own. Okay. So there's some threats there because I'm not really maybe communicating most effectively if I do that, if I happen to be low B. But if I'm high B, let's break down the fears. The first one would be loss of social inclusion. All right. So if I'm unable or I don't have the ability to interact with other people or connect with other people or be included in groups that matter to me, all right, that's a fear that necessitates behavior. What behavior might that bring out that we might not like, right? So it might be I'm trying too hard to get in with the group, to communicate with somebody, to be accepted into that group, all right? I might fear even more. I might want to leave the group or the company or the organization if I feel like I'm not being included because I want to be liked, all right? Because that self-confidence coming externally. And I'm actually pretty good at winning like from other people because it matters to me. So how are they feeling? What are they doing? I want to influence that because I want people to be happy and I'd like to be the reason that they tend to be happy. Another is loss of social interaction. So, again, when this is getting shot, we're managing through the COVID-19 quarantine and shelter at home or shelter in home. It's kind of like a worst case scenario for a high B, isn't it? Right? I want to interact with people. That gives me energy. So when I feel like that's going to happen, all right, that's when, again, I run or I try to recoup it the best I can. If I don't, what ends up happening is I lose productivity. My energy starts going down the more I'm alone or the more I feel isolated. Another is loss of praise, and that's personal, positive, and sometimes public praise. Those feedback loops, if I'm high B, matter to me. So let's say we're in a situation right now where I fear the loss of praise. I don't get to see my boss. I don't get to see my coworkers. I don't even get to see my people. What I'm missing is opportunities for feedback. Am I doing a good job? How does everybody feel? How do you feel about me? And even opportunities to give praise if I'm high B. Am I able to take advantage of those opportunities? How am I doing it right now? Through email? Okay, it's not maybe the best. All right. So I fear that loss of praise. And then finally, loss of fun. High Bs thrive in those social environments where we're having fun. And like I always think about high Bs, I happen to be one, and think about like a beer commercial where everyone's just together having fun and we're talking and we're chatting. It looks like an environment where I can be productive. So in a situation where all these are pulled away, loss of social inclusion, interaction, praise, feedback loops, and like loss of fun, it's essentially stripping me of my self-confidence, my ability to be productive. So in these situations, how do I regain some of those is what I'm looking at, right? How can I get my social inclusion, my social interaction? How can I find praise and feedback loops to fill me up? And how can I find fun amidst the current environment if I'm feeling these sources of fear? So again, let's hit pause one more time and respond to this in two ways with these two questions. When a person feels this way, how might they choose to behave? Think about a high B, and I'm fearing the loss of these. What type of behavior have you seen maybe from yourself or from others? The second question is, what coaching could we offer this person or ourselves when this state of fear emerges? How can we find some space to collect and say, I'm feeling the threat of loss of social interaction, or I'm feeling that loss, or I'm feeling the loss of praise and feedback loops at work. What should I do? And jot down a few notes. All right, let's move on to the C drive. C drive is a drive for patience, right? I'm looking for familiarity. I get my self-confidence from process and the familiar. And if I'm low C, right, I have no time. That's essentially what happens with me. I don't have time to deal with things if I'm low C. But if I'm high C, I have a longer attention span. I'm able to live and breathe and exist in processes. And I like my steps when they work. I want a process and steps. And the more familiar that I get, the more productive I get because my self-confidence increases. All right. So when fear hits, what do I fear? Well, one could be the loss of routine and consistency. I do the things I do each day because I am accustomed to them. My routine and how I work that way is the way that I want to do it typically. And when that gets shaken up, it gets hard to be productive. I end up stopping. I can't go further because I get stuck. Well, what am I supposed to do now that I'm not able to do my routine? What am I supposed to do now that the consistent theme that I had and how I work is gone? So what happens? My self-confidence falls off. I get nervous. I don't know what to do. I need to regain a sense of routine or consistency to mitigate that fear. Second is a loss of process. All right. If we're stuck at home right now when you're listening to this, or I'm out of my environment where I typically work, maybe my process left with me. All right. And a lot of folks might be dealing with that right now. So what's step one? What's step two? What's step three? When it comes to changing processes, that takes time for a high C. So if I'm a high C person right now and I'm managing a new environment, I guess the first bit of guidance would be to give myself a little bit of a break in terms of expecting to be as productive as I had been in the past. I need time to learn a new process until I can be productive again. And that can be frustrating if you're a high C. How about loss of space, right? The space that I work, the place that I work matters to me. I have it set up to necessitate the process that I had in place to be productive. So in the current circumstances, once again, you're working from home. And do you have all your things at home? How about the people that you typically interact with that you would just send a word over the cube to someone else, or walk down the hallway, or where you'd eat lunch, or how you flow through a day? Loss of space is a very big deal for high Cs. So I'd consider, if I'm a high C and I'm in the situation, I'm feeling this fear, how can I create a space that is similar to what I did before, or similar to what worked for me before, to regain some of that self-confidence so I can be productive? And finally, loss of time in general, but mostly time with family. And I put family in quotes on the screen because it doesn't necessarily mean just my nuclear family. It means my work family, like my friends that make up part of my family. All of that has influence on me. I need those relationships. I thrive off of those relationships. They're tenure based. I spend a lot of time with these people, and that's kind of that's my bedrock that gives me self-confidence when I am with them. And if I can't be with them, there is a great sense of fear. I could feel isolated, alone. I'm not with my community. So for high Cs, I encourage, when I feel those, when you feel those fears, how can I do my best to regain some of that? Okay, be it through conferencing, be it through calls, be it through regular connection. It's important that I regain that time, quality time with my family. Again, that broader sense of the word. So once again, as we navigate these high C sources of fears, which would be loss of routine, consistency, loss of process, loss of space, loss of time with family. When I feel this way, or when a high C person feels this way, how might I choose to behave? And again, what are we listing out? List out the things that maybe in the past when you felt this way, they've gone well. Maybe you've picked some behaviors that have filled in some of these blanks for you. What if you behaved in other ways that weren't so optimal, that weren't so productive? Okay, list those out. What does it look like when that overrides me, these fears? What can I end up doing? And second, that leads into our second question is, what coaching could we offer this person when this state of fear emerges? What coaching could we offer? Finally, let's dive into the D drive. This is a drive for formality, and it's a drive where I get my self-confidence from correctness. I want things to be right, and I want to know what right is. And for those that are low D, all right, what I want is no rules. So in a certain sense, with all the uncertainty going on, low Ds can sometimes even thrive in environments like this. Why? Well, what was isn't anymore. The rules don't matter. And if you're low D, you might resonate with that, at least to a degree. But let's stick with the high D side for the moment. I want correctness. So I do high quality of work. I want that. The higher my D drive goes, I want that swimming pool or lake of information to give me the confidence that I need to execute, to get things done right. Okay? So how can we influence a person in that environment? Well, the first is loss of clear expectations, right? So what's expected of me? How am I supposed to work now? Where do I get that information? And if I'm lose connection with my manager, for instance, or for the people that I work with on a project team, for instance, what happens when I lose those expectations? If I have the option to do nothing or make a mistake, what will I do? Odds are good I'm going to do nothing, because I don't want to make a mistake. I'll have to go back and fix it, et cetera, et cetera. So I can feel if I'm high D, when I feel like I don't have clear expectations, I can feel stuck. All right. And that's a big fear. I need to fix that. And how might I do that? Well, go demand clear expectations. Create them if you need to understand, hey, I got to build a system to operate within. That connects to the loss of performance feedback, which is our second one here. Why is that performance feedback important to high Ds? Well, because I want to know what I did was right. I want that validation that it's right. So I need those feedback loops so that I can keep producing the high quality work. So if I lose that, people stop communicating with me. What do I fear? Did I make a mistake? Did the work I even do matter? Is it even relevant anymore? And I could start to get frustrated, right? Because if I'm not getting feedback, all right, there is a fear of uncertainty that comes in now, doesn't it? Well, am I still relevant at this company? Am I in trouble? This is the type of thing that can go on in a high D's head if I'm not getting that performance feedback. How about loss of fairness and rules? High Ds likely go to environments where there are systems in place. There are rules. There's the way things go. And if they don't go that way, people are corrected or the system is corrected so that everything can move right and we can put out high quality of work. When we shake all that up and it doesn't feel like there's any fairness or there's any new rules, I get frustrated. It's hard to operate because there needs to be rules. That's a function of clear expectations. So what I end up having to do is I need to help redefine those rules in times of uncertainty. When I feel that fear that someone's not following the rules, someone doesn't know, seeking clarity from the folks that can provide that to me. Now, is it going to be perfect clarity, especially during times when we're moving in all these different directions? A lot of people are working very differently than they're accustomed to. Probably not. But a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. If I'm a high D, I'm buying more real estate. And another note for high Ds is to remember they actually operate with kind of the most amount of like self-criticism in a certain sense, because I'm always fearing that my work's not going to be perfect. And in an environment like this, that can be put into overdrive. So a little bit of coaching built in if you're a high D, take a breath and understand that you're doing your best, and that voice in your head that's telling you that you're not good enough, that your work's not good enough, that it's probably going to be wrong. You better look out. And then kind of the anxiety comes in. Take a breath, absorb it. It's maybe not going to make it go away, but understand that the odds that's accurate are actually very, very low. Given, again, look at your body of work. How often do you perform below expectations? Well, if you're a high D, the higher it goes is unlikely when it comes to getting things done correctly. So again, we'll close with the two questions. One, when a person feels this way, or if you're a high D and you feel this way, how might you choose to behave? What might you do that actually regains self-confidence? And what might you do that you would tweak or do differently if you took a pause? Second question is, what coaching could we offer this person when this state of fear emerges? When it comes into them, what are the ideas that we can provide somebody that's high D if we were working with them? And I also encourage you to look at the PI and coaching grid, which is a supplement that you could probably get to on the page where this is located. That's another place for some great ideas. All right, let's tie this together. So as we walk through today, we started with a couple quotes that talked about emotions aren't necessarily irrational. They just are, but they're based on an environment and existence outside of our singular world where we think we have total control of what's going on. And if we looked even further, those are built around those emotional responses about these natural adaptations. We're wired in different ways. We have to respond to it. The goal of today is, as we have these fears that drive certain behaviors, specifically at this time, the important thing is to be self-aware, not to be high IQ per Daniel Goleman's quote. If you happen to be high IQ, congratulations, but high EQ, hitting pause when we feel fear kind of come across us like a wave. Gaining that self-awareness is what's buying us that pause. All right, this is happening to me. I'm feeling these feelings. And then start to deploy things like, a pause can be good, but maybe we write things down. Maybe we write that email in Word, by the way, that we need to write out. We kind of process the fear. And then we decide, outside of self-awareness, how to self-manage. What type of behavior should I do given the circumstances? And in doing so, we end up engaging other people at a higher level, an emotionally intelligent level. And it becomes way easier to achieve business results regardless of the circumstances because we've mitigated the fears that are working likely on everybody right now. So hopefully this walk down the high drives and how fear can influence those drives has been maybe thought-provoking on a few things, maybe useful if one of those high drives happens to be yours. If you think of somebody else that might benefit from this short conversation, share this by all means and sit down and navigate through those two questions that we pose, which is when we feel this way or when I feel this way, how might I choose to behave? The second being, what coaching could I offer when the state of fear emerges? I think you're going to find that these are evergreen questions because there's a chance you're going to feel fear again. What should I do about it? These things that we're building today's conversations over are unlikely to change throughout the course of your life. Heck, we started off, it's ancestral in nature. I mean, over millennia of human existence is what's buried in us that's causing a lot of these subconscious emotions that drive us. So anytime we can have this pause, this reflective moment to think, how are those forces acting on me? It puts us more in the driver's seat, a more aware position to make choices. So if you're watching on YouTube or wherever we found this, that's a picture of me. I don't know how flattering it is or not. And I'm a senior leadership consultant with ADVISA. And if you want to touch base with me, my email is on the screen as well as our website to learn more about the things that we do at ADVISA. If you feel like what we've talked about today could be useful at your organization with your leadership team or whomever. And my email is bmckay, M-C-K-A-Y, at advisausa.com. So thanks for joining me today. I'm eager to get feedback from everybody that's had a chance to consume this, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.